Hello, and welcome to Message in the Middle with Marianne. We all know that life is hard, right? It's messy, it's unpredictable, but it can be wonderful all at the same time. My hope is that we can take a deep dive into self-development topics and explore life's lessons through book clubs, conversations, and interviews. And together, we can uncover the lessons that others have already learned to help us navigate this crazy, wonderful ride called life. Hello and welcome to Message in the Middle with Marianne, and today I have Dr. Funke Afolabi-Brown with me. Dr. Afolabi-Brown is a triple board certified sleep medicine physician. She's a member of the American Academy of Sleep Medicine and the American Thoracic Society. She's on the Medical Advisory Board of Baby Center and the Expert Advisory Board of Project Sleep. Dr. Afolabi-Brown is a speaker, coach, educator, writer, and the founder of Restful Sleep MD, where she helps busy professionals and organizations prioritize sleep to achieve optimal health and live to their fullest potential. Dr. Afolabi-Brown, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thanks for having me, Marianne. I'm excited to be here.
Me too. And I feel a little special knowing that, I'll give a little hint to you guys, she just came off an ABC segment, so I feel a little special getting an interview with her. So I want to jump in and sort of do a level set, if you will, and talk to our listeners about the stages of sleep. There's multiple stages of sleep. They have different relevance and importance. Can you sort of level set for us?
Yes. So, we talk about two major sort of stages of sleep, or maybe I'll say three. Okay. So the first is wakefulness. So wakefulness occurs before we then fall asleep, right? And then we go into what we call non-rapid eye movement sleep and rapid eye movement sleep. We cycle through in that non-REM sleep, we cycle through lighter stages, which is stage one. And we keep it very simple, the verbiage. The lighter stage of sleep is stage one, and then you go into stage two. And then you go into the third stage, stage three, which is really what people call deep sleep, right? So deep sleep occurs in stage three. And then the second sort of stage or phase of sleep is what we call our rapid eye movement sleep, or REM sleep. So REM sleep is not deep sleep. And I wanted to bring that up really early because people are like, yes, I want that deep sleep, that REM sleep. They're completely different because REM sleep actually is very active sleep. And they call it rapid eye movement because in that stage, your eyes are actually moving, even though majority of the muscles in your body are paralyzed, except, your diaphragm, your breathing muscle. So thankfully, that's still going. And then your eyes. And that's how they coined that phrase, rapid eye movement sleep. And so the reason why, what people have said just evolutionarily is because when we're in a rapid eye movement sleep is also our dream sleep. So in that stage, we are dreaming. And so imagine that you're dreaming that you're being chased. Your poor spouse is going to get hit multiple times and get clobbered. But with this, it's almost like your brain's way or your body's way of protecting you against injuring yourself and injuring others. And people that have, we call them REM sleep behavior disorder. And I know I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit right now, actually act out their dreams. And so that if you have someone who's acting out their dreams, they probably should get checked out because you're not supposed to, because your muscles are supposed to be paralyzed. Now, when it comes to the functions, the actual role of like deep sleep, for instance, is restoration. In that stage of sleep, that's when certain hormones are being sort of produced, like your growth hormone. You have regulation of other hormones like insulin and things like that. And so when you don't have deep sleep, you might have issues with just more of your body's wear and tear. And so you may feel exhausted because of the growth hormone, especially in children. They may have growth difficulties. So they may actually have poor growth as a result of that. If you're someone who's very active and you're not getting good enough deep sleep, remember growth hormone also helps with healing of your body, healing and restoration of your muscles. So you may feel just so drained and exhausted. So that's one thing that we know. In addition to that, memory consolidation and things like that occur in deep sleep. For REM sleep, again, the exact precise functions are unclear, but some of the things that have been postulated have been things like your mood regulation and then ability to sort of file emotions. So pleasant, unpleasant memories and things like that sort of get filed into certain categories in your brain. And you're moving things from your short-term memory to your long-term memory. And so that's why sometimes when you're having dreams, you're like, oh, wait, why do I feel like I'm having this? I'm a 40-something-year-old woman and I'm in grade school again. What am I doing in grade school with that teacher? Right. So it's all those things that has been synchronized. And sometimes you have dreams related to your own personal current experiences. Sometimes it may be things that you experience currently that's related to stuff that you had in the past. And it's just, again, we're still discovering a lot of all this, but these are just some of the roles.
So as you're talking, I can't help but think our bodies are just so complex, but so magnificent too, right?
Mm-hmm.
The almost robotic, the functions that we can do. Just as an aside, that's what popped into my head. It's really pretty crazy. The second thing that jumped out at me is, so the deep sleep is obviously so important. And I would think if you have a good, healthy relationship with sleep, that's a natural progression. But what are some of the common things where you see people being obstructed from getting into that deep sleep?
That's a great question. There are quite a few things. And when I think about that, really we're focusing on what is fragmenting your sleep because we cycle through those stages. So typically you have this period of wakefulness, right? You're awake, you're in bed, you're going to sleep, you're letting go, right? And then you go from wake to light sleep. So typically that's how we go. You go into stage 1 and you go into stage 2. And then it's almost like you're descending down, right? And then you get into stage 3 and then you go into REM sleep. In between, you'll have some arousals, very normal. So if you wake up in the middle of the night, if you shift your body, your position, that's completely normal. We all wake up a few times at night. But if you're having those arousals very frequently, so say you're moving from that stage 2 to stage 3, and then you start to have those fragmented episodes because of those arousals, it's going to leave you sort of short on maybe specific stages, maybe the continuity of those stages, right? So that's the thing. So it's not just getting the sleep, it's the continuity of the sleep. And what are reasons why that could happen? A lot of times I try to put them into buckets. So the first bucket we'll talk about is things like what we call behavioral factors, right? So are there things you're doing before bed? Are you watching a very jarring movie or graphic movie or listening to the news that's really scary and disturbing? Or are you drinking caffeine before bed or alcohol? All those things have been shown to disrupt your sleep. And so then it deprives you of really getting that continuous high quality sleep. So those are more of the behavioral pieces. Those are just a few. Do you have a kid that wakes up nonstop and is coming into your room? So of course you're not going to get that sleep. And then the second category are more of the medical issues and that's a whole thing on its own. So things like sleep apnea, where you have pauses in your breathing from snoring during sleep. And as you're going into that sort of deeper stages of sleep or REM sleep, your brain kind of wakes you up to say, you got to breathe because you get into that stress, fight or flight mode. And so imagine doing that all the course of the night. You slept, but you didn't really sleep well. Other conditions like restless leg syndrome, if you have a medical disorder, if you have, asthma or reflux, all those things are medical things that can cause your sleep to be fragmented and can deprive you of good quality sleep. And then the final, I usually call, those things that are present during the day, but also kind of have their own manifestation at night. So if you have anxiety, if you have depression, if you have ADHD, your brain may be wired a little bit different and things are firing a little bit different. That doesn't go away when you're sleeping, right? So that might also kind of cause sort of more of a continuation of what's going on in a different manner during sleep. And so when we're able to kind of put them into those categories, then it helps you know, like, okay, this is what I need to face. This is what I need to figure out. And then you'll be able to address it so that you know what you need to do in terms of getting treated.
So mental health, it sounds like it's maybe a two-way, it's bi-directional in that mental health affects sleep, but I think not getting the right levels or the continuum of sleep probably affects mental health. Is that accurate?
That is 100%. And that's one thing that we know. It is a bi-directional relationship because when you have, again, let's give an example of anxiety where you feel very sort of wired, right? So because of that stress, panic, anxiety, that increased arousal system makes it hard for your mind to shut down. It's constantly running, constantly churning. You don't feel safe. You feel like an increase in what we call our sympathetic nervous system. And so that's going to make it hard for you to sleep. And we know that sleep is healing for our minds, healing for our emotions. So you're losing that ability to make those connections. There's a portion of our brain called the amygdala. It's like a very tiny structure in the middle of our brain that helps with emotion regulation. And it's really needs sleep for things to be maintained at equilibrium. So when you're not sleeping, you may notice that even if you have anxiety, things just seem worse. Everything seems to be escalated. Your threshold, your tolerance threshold for things just seem to be amped up. And so that's bi-directional. So you're not sleeping well because you have a mood issue, and then you have a mood issue that then makes it hard for you to sleep well, and then vice versa. And so, yes, absolutely. It's two ways.
There's a lot of people in my Facebook group and that listen to the podcast. They've been on a wellness journey. And I believe there is some correlation between sleep patterns and weight loss, weight gain. She's shaking her head. Yes, you guys. So can you talk a little bit about that? Because I know we'd all love to know what that connection is.
Yes. So, there's even now been studies where they've looked at groups of people on their weight loss journey. And there was one that was in, a very prominent journal. I believe it was the New England Journal of Medicine, where they looked at two groups of people who had, the normal weight loss tips, program and things like that, diet, exercise, and then just general healthy sleep recommendations. That's what they did. And then they had another group where they had all those interventions. And then they also had them in an intensive, let's make sure you're getting good sleep type of program. And in comparing both, even though they kept their intake the same, so their caloric intake was the same, everything else was the same. The group that had more of work on their sleep actually lost significant, not just a little couple of pounds, significantly more weight. And they looked at their metabolism, and the metabolism of those who were more in that like sleep program in addition to their weight loss program actually had better metabolism. And that's just incredible. So when we're approaching weight loss as a journey, I think it's really important for us to focus on how we can make sure that we're also optimizing sleep. And there are various reasons for that. One of the things we know, just in terms of from a chemical standpoint or a biochemical standpoint, is that there are appetite hormones. A lot of people may have heard of that. It's the leptin, which we call the satiety hormone, that helps you know, okay, you're full, right? And then there's the ghrelin, which is kind of the hunger hormone that lets you know you're hungry, right? And so typically your leptin should be high and your ghrelin should be low and everything is well. But that system is regulated by sleep. It's impacted by sleep. So when you don't get enough sleep, you get a flip of it. So your leptin actually goes low, so you just don't feel full. And your ghrelin is high, so you're constantly hungry. And the thing about it is the way that works, because also sleep impacts our judgment, right? We've made some decisions when we're sleep deprived, which is not the best. So you have these hormones that are working against you now, right? You have judgment that's kind of off. And so you go to the fridge. What are you going to pick? Your brain is not going to say, oh, yes, let's get this plate of lettuce or this carrot sticks. It's going to say, whoa, there's carrot cake in the back. Let's go for that one. And a bag of chips and a bowl of ice cream. And so this is really what we're seeing. And then even when we think about just the motivation itself to be able to exercise and engage in any physical activity program, sleep impacts our motivation. So you had a crappy night of sleep, you just don't feel like running. You don't feel like going, you don't feel like wearing those sneakers and getting into your workout clothes, right? So we can see that there's so many levels by which that can affect our ability to lose weight.
So I'm laughing. You guys, I'm laughing this time. Of course, you're going to pick the carrot cake when you're really tired, right?
Yeah.
So that leads me to ask, what are some tips? What can you offer up to us that people can take away for elongating our sleep, making us be on that continuum successfully. And I guess falling asleep is always challenging for some people. I mean, anything in those areas that you can give as tips.
Yes. So there are a few things. I would say the first thing is not just focus on the quantity, because you may hear people say, yes, you need to get 7 to 9 hours of sleep, but how are you supposed to get it, right? Where am I supposed to find that? That's number one, because you're busy, or you have kids who are not sleeping, or you do get into bed and you're not able to get that sleep. So I would say focus on the quantity, of course, get 7 to 9 hours as much as possible. But also, more importantly, I would dare say, is focus on the quality of sleep you're getting. So what does that look like? It looks like being consistent. Start with that. Set a bedtime and set a wake time and keep it the same no matter what, even on the weekends. Why is that important? Because we all have what we call our circadian rhythm or internal clock. And this actually helps to determine when we're asleep, when we're awake. And there's melatonin production that it regulates. So in the evening, your melatonin levels rise and in the morning it drops. And so when your schedule is constant, your body knows what it's supposed to do. And now that same circadian rhythm, it's a very brilliant system that we have that also actually, in fact, affects so many parts of our body. It affects our metabolism as well. It affects our mood. It affects our breath. It affects so many systems. So when you try to control that or create a schedule as much as possible that's consistent, that's very beneficial. Another thing that I think really helps, especially with people who may have a hard time sleeping, is creating routines, right? For most of us, we may have kids that we're like, oh, yes, we read a book, we take a bath, we do some singing, and then they go to bed, right? And what does that do for our little ones? It cues their bodies and their brains that it's time for sleep. But we can't just go to bed. We need the save. So you need that wind down time. In fact, I would say you need it more because you've been so busy, you've been running, you've been working, your mind is like racing. So you do need a buffer. It's almost like what I call a buffer zone to help you transition from the day mode to the night mode. And so find what works, pick 2 or 3 things that bring you joy, whether it's reading a nice book or listening to a podcast, like Marianne's podcast, you know what I'm saying? Like, something that helps you calm down, taking a bath, some yoga, some breathing, just something that really relaxes you. Another one I love is journaling, because then you could just kind of put all those stuff down, get it from cluttering your brain. So that's for routine. Another thing I would say you need to work on, especially when it's really hot out, is optimizing your bedroom. How do you optimize your bedroom? You want to make sure it is cool, it is calm, it is noise free. So it is cool, it is dark. So cool, usually I would say anywhere from 62 to 67 degrees, whatever works for you. Just make sure it's comfortably cool, not freezing cold, right? And in the summer, you do need to focus on that, because I noticed that a lot of people wake up frequently and it's because they're uncomfortable because of the heat. Darkness is sleep's friend. So what darkness will do is program our brain's melatonin production to say, yes, you need to come out so that people can sleep. We call melatonin the darkness hormone too. And then, there's outside noise. You may need earplugs. If you have a snoring partner, you may need noise canceling headphones or get them checked out to be treated. And then things like caffeine, alcohol, all those things can break your sleep and disrupt your sleep and really deprive you of good quality sleep. So you want to stop taking that like several hours before bed. So those are just some things that I would say, easy, start off with. And then if you're noticing it's been 3 months or so, sleep is still a struggle, I'm tired all the time, it is not normal to be tired all the time, right? So you want to definitely speak to a professional about it, because it may be a sign that there's an underlying sleep disorder.
I love the tips. They made me think of some of my questions, and I'm not a big fan of rapid fire questions, but there are a few topics I want to know what your thought is on these, but they're probably quick hits for you. So you mentioned not having noise in the bedroom, but a lot of us, I'm pointing at myself, have a TV in the bedroom, and we're used to going to sleep with the TV on. Yeah. I'm going to guess that you're going to say not a good thing. Is that true? What's your position on that?
What's my position? It's yes, you're right. It is not a good thing, because that light in the background, and when the TV is on, and people tell me, they have the TV on for several reasons. Some because they can't stand the quiet, actually.
Yeah.
Sometimes that quiet is scary or deafening for them. And I have a solution for that. One of the solutions is to have a white noise machine or just an old fan that just hums through the night so that you're not just listening to your heart thumping, right? So that would replace the noise. And that's actually better because the pitch on TV varies, and that can actually trigger your brain to wake up multiple times. And then some people don't like pure darkness. And what I would recommend for that is if you're going to need a little bit of light, it's okay, but make sure that it's not anywhere near where you can look directly. So maybe especially for young kids, maybe having a little night light, that's fine. But make sure that's not something that's within your scope of vision. And, it may take some practice, but getting used to sleeping in the dark is actually better, if you can. So those are two main ones. And then sometimes the content of the TV also can create our brains to start to just wake up from time to time. And, I've had a couple, you can tell I've talked to a lot of people about, some people will say like, you know what, I turn it on, it's on a timer, right? So the thing about it is, our brain makes associations. So when you fell asleep, whatever it is you needed to fall asleep, your brain is going to seek out those experiences when you wake up naturally in the middle of the night. So if the last time your brain was falling asleep, the TV was on in the background, when your brain wakes up, it's going to wake up even more because it's like, wait, something is off. The TV was on and now it's off. I need the TV back on so I could feel safe because that's how I fell asleep. And it might be an evolutionary thing, but so the timer doesn't necessarily fix it, but I'm going to put this out there and say, if you have a completely restful, blissful sleep with the TV on and life is good, you have all the energy you need, you're motivated to do everything, then you don't need to change anything. But most times there's room for improvement.
That was just an epiphany for me because I have the timer on, but you are so right because when I wake up, I'm like, it's too quiet. I need that TV back on. That's the only way I can go back to sleep, right? So yeah, I didn't realize that. Talk to me a little bit about melatonin. So some people are on that bandwagon. It's sort of gone up and down, but it's always talked about. Does it really help or does it hurt more than it helps?
So the important thing is figuring out why. If you're using melatonin as a fix to replace the healthy sleep habit, then ideally not. That's number one. And then we also have to realize that melatonin is a hormone. And even though it's marketed as a supplement, it is a hormone that should be regulated. It's just not regulated. In other countries, like in the UK, it's by prescription. And so what melatonin does, because our brain produces its own natural sufficient melatonin, which by the way is teensy tiny, and it's just enough to prime your brain for sleep. But the ones you get in the stores are mega doses that have a wide variation in the content that they declare that they have. And we have studies that have shown that. And so if you need melatonin, number one, I would say is try to figure out why and do it with the advice of a professional so that they can help you. One, make sure that you should be taking it because there are some interactions with even though there are a few certain medications. So you want to make sure that you get the supervision of a professional, of a physician to help you know if you should actually be taking it and then figure out why. Because if you have the TV, if you have the noise on, if you have lights all over, then you're suppressing your brain's melatonin, which is good enough. And then you're taking an external one, which number one may not necessarily be the safest option for you. Number two has some side effects. And number three, you don't even know how much you're getting. So I would say if you have things like, jet lag, or you're a shift worker, those conditions is where, we can use melatonin and it's approved and things like that. But in other situations, you definitely want to be cautious to understand why you need it and then how can you take it safely.
That's good advice. I do think I know of a few people that take it and have been on it for years. So I think that's not probably a great thing. Tell me what your position is on napping. How do we feel about napping? Because some people would say, I'm not one of them, I can't nap, but some people would say it's okay that I only get 4 hours of sleep at night. I take a really good power nap during the day. Is that valid?
Naps, I would say good nap is in the eye of the napper. Sounds cheesy. But I think it's important to figure out again, similar to melatonin, why. Because if you're taking a nap because it's kind of part of your self-care and it's just, oh, this little extra thing I do to give myself a little boost during the day, it's actually fine. But if you're someone who's already short on sleep chronically at night, or you have difficulties sleeping at night, then you probably don't want to rely on a nap to fix it. You want to try to get to the bottom of what's going on with your sleep. So if you have insomnia, for instance, we do actually recommend you avoid taking a nap during the day because it's going to actually make it harder for you to fall asleep at night. But if you're someone who's really busy and from time to time, maybe you travel or work and you feel like you don't get enough sleep and you want to play a little bit of catch up, I think it's fine. But the other piece I would say is when you want to take a nap, you want to try to keep it short. So you don't want a nap that's excessively long. And then you want to take a nap that's early. You'd want to take it I would say at least before 2 p.m. And the reason why is you want to have enough time in the day to be able to build enough of a sleep drive that would then help you sleep at night.
That makes sense. And those are really great tips. Thank you for sharing them. I want to go back to the beginning. And when I introduced you, I left out a line of your bio that I think is super important and I want you to explain to everybody. So one of the things you say is that you're passionate about helping people harness sleep as our superpower, right? So what does harnessing sleep and making that become our superpower really mean to you?
That's a great question. For me, the work I do with sleep is very personal. It was really from experiences I had struggling with sleep deprivation and struggling with insomnia and seeing how much it initially robbed me of just really living my fullest potential because I was constantly trying to conserve energy, constantly holding back, not parenting the way I would like because I was angry all the time and tired all the time and everything they did was was wrong. Or even at work, I was showing up exhausted, not being able to show empathy. And so it was when I had to kind of say, okay, sleep is just so critical to my ability to thrive. And then understanding how to optimize and prioritize my sleep then almost gave me my life back. And so that there was my superpower, right? And I think that can be everybody else's superpower, where you can realize how much the healing piece, the memory, the performance enhancing function of sleep, the restorative benefits of sleep, the ability to really show up the best version of yourself makes it a superpower. So that's kind of what I mean by that.
So I think that's a great answer. And I almost want to wrap up there, but there's one more question I always ask people, and that's, what surprises you the most? You've been doing this for a long time now. You're really focused and in the middle of all of these sleep topics and helping so many people within this space. What surprises you the most?
A number of things. I try to make sure that I don't lose the wonder, even in the mundane. So personally, again, is when I started this journey, even separate from my practice of taking care of, kids with sleep issues, when I really started helping moms, one of the things that surprised me was seeing how much a need it was and seeing the response. So I think that for me gave me that sort of external motivation. I didn't need it, but it was helpful to say, wow, I can't stop this stuff. I need to get the word out there. And so I think that was just beautiful to see and experience, and getting the feedback and things like that. That's one.
You know what I love about that answer is that I've talked about this before, and people often struggle with the concept of, sort of finding their thing, like what makes you special and how do you stand out? And sometimes people think that has to be like, I always say solving world hunger, but something really, really huge. But you have this passion for sleep, and not to make it sound small, but it's not solving world hunger, but it's so huge, right? And so impactful. And I think it's important for people to hear how this little gift, and I'm calling it little, but this little gift to really get into this niche on this topic and blow it up to get awareness and help people can make such a huge difference to the world. So thank you for that and for all that you're doing to educate us.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining me today. This was a great conversation.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Message in the Middle with Marianne. If you enjoyed the podcast, please take a minute to share it and write a review as it helps bring new listeners to our audience. If you'd like to keep the conversation going between episodes, please join us at Facebook group Message in the Middle with Marianne.